Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Odyssey House Journals, one of the most watched and listened to podcasts dealing with addiction and recovery, and some pretty raw stories that we hear from people. I'm Randall Carlisle, your host. My co-host is Nicole Slack, and we hit a milestone, Nicole.
Yes. I was going to pretend like I didn't know.
See, you're supposed to play, the other person and say, really, Randall, what kind of milestone did we hit? Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, really? Which one? What kind?
See, you played that well. We hit over 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel.
Yay!
And that's very significant. So I guess I would ask, if you happen to be watching this on our YouTube channel, all you got to do, if you're watching, there's a little button that says subscribe. It doesn't mean we're going to charge you any money or anything else. It just means you get notified every week when we have a new Odyssey House Journals podcast. So please do that. Our guest today, you want to be called Becca or Rebecca?
Well, you can call me either.
Oh, well.
Becca.
Becca
is what I go by recently.
Becca
yes.
Nelson, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Happy to be here.
Are you? You're nervous?
Yes. No. I'm excited.
Wow. Now, that's pretty cool. Becca is one of our favorite people in our program. I guess I shouldn't say that because we shouldn't have any favorites, but it's just been so much. It's fun to watch you as you've grown through the program and are succeeding so well. So just so you know that we all respect you a lot and really think a lot of you. Maybe you can tell us a little background of your story, why you came to Odyssey House, what happened in your past, whatever you'd like to share with us.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to. So my journey kind of began pretty normal growing up for the most part. And I ended up getting divorced and having a really difficult time with it. Being on my own was not good for me, and got into substance use. But my biggest addiction, honestly, and when people ask me my DOC, I say video games. Believe it or not.
You prefer video games over the drugs that you were addicted to?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Kind of tracks, though. Escape. You don't have to deal with things. You can just focus on something else.
Well, it has everything in it. It has all the components of a really good drug. You have 100% distraction, so you don't have anything else bugging you. You know, you've also got like the online chatting with other people. So for people that have what we call in treatment, we have our LAR, which is the love, approval, and respect, which is one of our thinking areas that we work on and that I've worked on through the program. And it's getting that approval, seeking that. So you're getting that, you're getting the endorphin dump, you're getting, I'm sure, some kind of serotonin in there. I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on that one, but I just feel like it was everything. It gave me everything. And coming from a really competitive background, it was a good replacement drug from I was a competitive dancer growing up. And so kind of having that drive and that competitive edge about me, I guess, really wanting to succeed, the video games was a good transition into that.
So why the hell did you turn to drugs if you had video games?
Well, that's a great question. It started out as, at first, I was in kind of a medical position where I was gaming 18 hours a day. Ooh. And it's some drug, right?
Yeah,
I was gaming 18 hours a day.
You can't do heroin 18 hours a day or any drug.
No. But you probably need to stay awake.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't just that. The only drugs I got into while gaming were alcohol and cannabis use. And it was normal in the gaming community. For anyone that's gamers out there and understands what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, because it's shots. We won the game, playing some Modern Warfare. We got team win, or whatever it is we're playing. It's shot time. And then it's, smoking weed or smoking cannabis kind of goes hand in hand with gaming for a lot of us.
Really?
In fact, in some of the communities, in some of the circles, it's even like, hey, we're pro cannabis, like they'll sometimes say that in the looking for group online. Anyway, not too important. Just it was a segue into, other things in my life. But yeah, the biggest thing was video games. It was just
what
addicting.
Drugs did you end up being addicted to? Or didn't you?
Really just alcohol and cannabis. I explored and experimented maybe less than a handful of times with some other drugs. Never IV use. Grateful for that one because I know that's a hard one for a lot of people.
Sure.
But yeah, it was.
So what brought you into Odyssey House?
That is a great question. So for me, things got a lot rougher when I separated from my most recent spouse, and I ended up having a lot of mental health issues. And with some of those issues came up some trauma that had happened, and I was kind of blindsided by it and didn't know how to react or how to deal with it. And
These
ended
are
up
things that happened earlier that just came up in your brain.
Yes, correct. And so this trauma that I'm learning to deal with and trying to figure things out, I had been in therapy for long hours. I had done, the CBT and the DBT and all of the stuff and the things, really. And no one could figure out what was really going on with me. I had the diagnosis of bipolar and schizoaffective and ADHD and OCD and just a big, long list, right? And
you were diagnosed with all those?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
What a mess.
I know, right? It was a really long test, too. It was like 6 hours.
Jeez.
So, so they tried to treat it with anything they could, and I was doing the whole thing, right? A lot of years. It was probably over about a 6-year period that I was really struggling and really trying to figure things out and just not making any headway, just staying at this kind of middle ground. And then eventually I went into this state of psychosis after doing meth one time. It was like the second time I had ever done meth in my whole life. And the last time I've ever done it. And it spiraled me into this state of psychosis. And I don't know what it was, the combination of the mental health, the drugs I was on, drinking and cannabis use, just all combined to be the cluster word that we don't use on the show. Right?
Yes.
And so after that, I just got into trouble. I had just all these things happening. Characteristics about me were changing. I was doing things I would never normally do. And like getting up in people's faces and being aggressive and yelling and screaming at them. And
sweet little Becca.
I know, right?
Jeez.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
No, I don't talk lightly of it, though, because it's a part of my life that I regret, wish didn't happen. And on the same hand, am grateful for the learning experience it has been in my life. So I ended up one night at like 2:30 in the morning going over to my father's house. And I remember being in a state of panic. Through this 6-year period, I had a lot going on, delusions of grandeur mixed in with the psychosis. I thought, all these crazy things were happening to me. Like, I remember going to my ex-husband one day and I'm like, someone's, stalking me or, just like these delusions of grandeur and could not figure out what was really going on. So I ended up at my dad's house one night and I was talking to him and it turned into a fight out of nowhere. Well, I don't remember a lot of the fight. In fact, probably 90% of it. The next thing I know, I'm on the floor and then I'm getting arrested and then I'm going to jail. So
he called the cops.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I remember there being yelling and fighting, but again, very out of character for me. I'm very close with my father, and that's not something I would normally do. to anyone, let alone my father. So anyways, I ended up in jail, and that's a whole other story for a whole nother podcast. It was really bad. I ended up dying in jail, literally dying, heart stopping, going into a coma, and woke up 5 days later from a coma. That's, like I said, whole nother podcast. It was very intense.
Do you know what caused it? I mean,
Yes. It was a lot of very poor treatment.
in jail.
In jail, yeah.
So when you woke up from the coma, where were you? Were you still
In the
jail?
hospital.
Oh, in the hospital.
Yeah,
So
I woke up in the hospital.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So I spent a couple weeks in the hospital. You're just fine. You get to be curious. It's a big story, but I remember waking up from the coma and knowing this was my second chance, because they told my family I wasn't going to live a couple hours. They'd call all into the hospital. They were all there. You know, the doctor says she's got about 2 hours. And then I don't know all the details because I haven't been able to talk to the medical staff there since I left and went back to jail. But
so they literally told your family that you were 2 hours away from death.
yes,
Wow.
yes,
Okay. So you miraculously survived, obviously.
yeah,
And so they took you back to jail after the coma?
yes,
What
they
a
did.
bummer.
Yeah, and I
Oh,
had to
Lived.
Hey, I'm alive.
Back to jail.
Yes.
Yes, I had to recoup back in jail. It was a horrible experience. But that gets me to answer your question now, finally, of how I got into Odyssey
Right.
House, right?
Sure.
Well, first, when I got out, I went to another recovery center from jail after the second 6 weeks of being in jail after the coma. So recouped in jail, went to this other house, and then I left due to some medical issues, we'll call it for now, and they just didn't have the things I needed at that facility. And it was meant to be, because within the next 4 days, I ended up coming to Odyssey and getting admitted. And I've been in Odyssey for about 6 months now. So,
And you got admitted to Odyssey's women's mental health program. Correct.
well, I started out at one of the other houses, actually.
Okay.
And
Start
then-
regular adult residential.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And I started out between the last treatment center and this one, figuring out in there that I finally think I might know what my diagnosis is. I think I finally might know what's wrong with me and why they've been so stumped with trying to figure out how to help me for so many years. And so I took this thought diagnosis that I had to my therapist at the adult house. And she said, whoa, okay, we need to get you like a specialized trauma therapist for that. So I got to another therapist and had an absolutely amazing experience with her. She's been one of my, I don't think cohort is the right word, but she's just amazing in every way and really has helped me progress and helped me to succeed in life and in the program and with my mental health. So I tell her all the time, I think that even though this has been quite like a progressive thing, getting from one stage to the other, and I hated jail, and I hated all of the, psychosis and all the things I've gone through.
And almost dying.
That too. Yeah, well,
That was not great.
no, it wasn't. So, but getting to this point was an amazing place for me because I finally had what I've been looking for so many years, was a therapist who understood. So we went through a bunch of testing, and sure enough, after doing the testing, it was very clear that I had DID. And DID is dissociative identity disorder, which is formerly multiple personality disorder.
Right.
And that has been life-saving for me to finally be able to read some of the material and go, oh my gosh, yes.
So there was another one of you protecting the real you. Mm-hmm. Was that the angry psychotic side?
I believe so.
Did it have a name?
His name was Henry.
So it was a male version of you. And how... I'm reading a book on that right now. It's really amazing that you and this woman had 3 different personalities, and they were all aimed at protecting her, and she was raped. And when the police came, she used a different name because it was the protector of the person. And so they're getting to a trial right now, and it's really hard for the attorney to try to explain, why did you say your name was Jane when it was Barbara, that kind of stuff. Well, Jane was protecting me, that kind of stuff. Wow.
Yeah, well, it makes perfect sense to me.
Well, so is Henry your only other?
They call them alters.
Yes.
I mean, some people refer to them as other things. I call them alters.
Alter.
In my system, which is what makes up me.
Okay.
And for me, I have 8 or had 8. So when I first started figuring out my diagnosis and how to cope with it and how to deal with it, I did a lot of homework. I did a lot of studying on DID, what it is, how it affects you. And for those of you who don't know that much about it, it's basically where you have a lot of trauma, usually childhood trauma, to the point where your little childhood brain doesn't know how to handle it, so it splits, kind of. And then it develops this personality that protects you so that you can handle the trauma. Well, I ended up having 8 alters, and through a lot of work with my therapist, some EMDR, and a lot of work on my own. My friends would be going to the rec time at the houses, going to the movies, or going to whatever, this and that. And you usually find me in my room studying or writing. I've got lots of stacks of my writing and books and things I've gone through, and just hashing it all out.
Wow.
Figuring myself out. Because there's no better time than when you're in treatment to figure yourself out. So I really dedicated a lot of my time and energy to do that. Well, through integration, which is the process of trying to have those alters, because at first, when you first have alters, they can come into your body, take over, and be you, right? That's one of the things they can do. So it's like a stepping process. First, it's, all right, let's get them to go to the background so that I can live my life normally. And I did it where I would check in with each one of them. I positioned it like a clock. And I would check in with each one of them. There would be Henry, right? And there was my younger self, Sarah. And then I had, some other ones that would go around the clock. And I would just check with them. Hi, how are you doing today? And is there anything that we need to talk about before I start my day?
So you're recognizing that they exist is
Correct.
Basically it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, it's the one thing that's so interesting about having alters is they share so much love for you, at least mine do, and a kind of love that you don't get anywhere else. And it makes me wonder sometimes, because I've always had a self-esteem issue and problems with self-love and that throughout most of my life. And I wonder sometimes if maybe these little alters have pieces of that love, and they, are now giving it back to me. It's a very beautiful cycle and relationship that we have. But through integration, which is the next step down, I've been able to kind of like signing a contract with some of these alters, just say thank you for all you've done. Thank you for your time and your love and your support and your protection, most importantly. But we're going to end this contract now, and I'm good. And then I don't check in with them anymore. So I went from having no alters that I could recognize to having 8, understanding them, checking in with them, doing well with them, and narrowing it down to now I have 3.
Is the goal to have none, or?
I don't know that there is a goal, Randall. I think the goal is.
I was just curious. I mean, because they're not interfering with your normal life now, right?
No, they're not.
So you may have the 3 alters forever.
Yeah. I don't know what the future holds. The one thing I have learned about mental health is it really is just an ongoing process. It's just a cycle of change, of evolution, of growth.
This is intriguing. What do you have you heard this story before?
I've heard a little bit, very, very little bit about your DID, but...
And people don't have a very good understanding of it either.
No.
I definitely don't, but I love it. You're explaining it so well. Like, I feel like I'm understanding
really
more.
are.
Thank you.
But
And how long have you been working on the DID?
So I started working on it 7 months ago,
Okay.
and it's only been 7 months. And my therapist did say one thing. When she did the assessment, she said, I'm one of the ones that I have a really high symptoms. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really high on the scale of being DID. But at the same time, I don't have the blackouts that a lot of people do when they're on that higher scale. So I've been able to kind of have this higher functioning ability to sort through the process.
so you're aware, you remember each altar when they were speaking on your behalf.
No, that's an interesting thing. It's not necessarily like a blackout. Like, some people black out and wake up somewhere else, like they don't remember.
Right.
For me, it's I know I'm there, but if I am speaking like with my therapist and one of my alters wants to come into my body and speak for me, then I basically just kind of move to the background, like in the back of my head. So I'm still there physically, and I know I'm there physically. I just don't hear anything that's said.
So you don't know what the altar
Is
said
saying. Yes.
when they took the forefront.
Exactly. Like, we record all of the sessions just so that I will be able to go back and hear them. Some pieces I'll remember. Sometimes my memory will be jogged a little bit, but there's usually most of the parts that I don't remember. So my therapist will remind me sometimes, well, this is what so-and-so, one of my alters, said. And
Wow.
yeah.
Is the voice different when the altar takes over than your normal voice?
You know, that is a fantastic question. So one of my alters is actually British and speaks in a British accent.
Can you speak with a British accent?
I try hard, but I'm not very good at it.
I don't think any of us are, but this is a good British accent.
I don't know.
Oh.
I would have to listen back on one of those recordings to tell you.
Really?
I mean, sure, I'm sure it's great.
Yeah.
No,
How
I'm
long
teasing.
would you say you've been, I don't know, how long would you say you've been not dealing with, but like how long experiencing DID? Not, I mean, you've been treating it for 7 months, but now when you look back, when do you think it all started?
Great question.
Yeah, great question. So it's interesting that you guys asked those back to back, because there was actually a time period when I was gaming online that I spoke in the British accent. It was like a 2-year period where I spoke only in the British accent, and I had a whole story to back it up. And I was just kind of in the background. I remember doing it, but I don't remember very much of the gaming during that period of time.
Wow.
Which is interesting. So a long time I've been dealing with the alters. I just didn't know what it was or who they were.
Now you have children, right?
I do.
What?
4.
4?
Mm-hmm.
So when you've been raising them, I wonder, do you know if any of your alters were dealing with them as opposed to you? Or
You know,
not?
I'm not sure. I feel like it was mostly me when they were a lot younger.
Okay.
And then once I got more into gaming and more into either being alone or isolating is when they started to come out more.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's an intriguing story. I've never, and you seem very much at peace now because you've identified.
Yes.
Right.
Very much.
That was the key, wasn't it?
Oh, it was.
Identify and then dealing with it, because before you didn't know.
Mm-mm.
How did you come up with? You said you diagnosed yourself.
Yeah.
First.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you come up with that? What was it that gave you a clue?
Well, I had thought about it several times and read about it a little bit. And then, I don't know, one day out of the blue, I just kind of knew something was amiss. And I went to the therapist at my first treatment center and I said, hey, can you help me figure this out? Because, I know exactly what it was. When someone told me that with schizophrenia, the voices are auditory, you hear them.
Right.
And with other things like DID, they're internal voices. And I was under the impression for like 3 years that they were the same thing. I didn't know, because I don't hear auditory things and I don't see auditory things or see visual things. So that was the key for me. And then I started asking questions. And then the hard thing about DID though is it's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to identify. They just don't want to talk about it. And it's hard for me because I remember the first time I approached even the workers at this other place, they were like, you're diagnosing yourself. That's not a diagnosis. We came up for you. And they basically just like shunned it out of me. They were like, no, that's ridiculous. Like I remember asking for a printout of some information or something, and they were like, no, that's ridiculous.
Wow.
And then even another time in treatment, I spoke with a psychiatrist, and the first question is always, what makes you think you have DID, or what symptoms do you have? And it's really hard talking to people about it, you know?
Well, it sounds sort of like do-do-do-do-do.
It does.
I mean, it's like she's making
Like
this up.
parapsychology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm so glad that you really worked things out while you've been at Odyssey.
Yeah. I really have.
You're happy now? You're at peace?
Yeah, very, very, very grounded, very grateful for the whole experience. You know, it's the first time in my life where I can say, for all the trauma that happened to me, that I can truly say, it's okay, I'm grateful. It's the way of life. It's the way of expansion. It's the way that the universe just complies with our needs and how we grow. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was doing my little communion with Mother Earth, Mother Gaia, because I love organic things. Even in jail, I raised ants because
they were there.
Because it was the only organic thing in the whole cell.
Yeah.
And so I'd feed them, and I got this big colony, you know. People thought I was nuts.
Well,
I am, so it's okay.
Well, raising ants. No, that's it.
So I was communing with Mother Gaia and just realizing that the whole experience was meant to be. And so grateful for it and for the people around me that I've been just so fortunate to be in contact with, and the opportunities that have arisen, and just things have fallen into place in my life finally. You know, after years of struggling and years of needing and wanting and just trying so hard to figure things out. And now they've settled.
Wow.
And it's beautiful. And I love it.
That's a great way to end the podcast, isn't it? I consider myself lucky to have met you, and I'm really glad that you've come into the program and it's worked for you. And thank you for stopping by and sharing this. You're the first person who's ever shared a DID kind of discovery and expression. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for explaining it so well.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
And I hope you all who were watching and listening got something out of this. We sure did. So thank you for watching or listening to another edition of Odyssey House Journals.